A man who lives in the shadow of a proposed industrial plant formally withdrew his legal challenge of the controversial project last week. To explain why, I'm joined by Medardo Monzon, a retired chemist and Fernandina Beach resident who has provided technical support for citizens opposing the project. Welcome back to the program, Medardo.
Thank you. Thank you for having us back.
And I'm also joined by Tom Budd. He is president of Fernandina Winds Incorporated, which is doing business as No Ethanol Fernandina. Hi, Tom. Welcome back.
Thanks for having us back.
So, Tom, the last time you were on, you both explained concerns about this project. You had filed a formal challenge known as a petition for administrative hearing on this project in April, and the court
Mhm.
granted that hearing. It was actually just going to be in another week or two. So, why did you decide to drop your appeal?
Legal reasons. We were proceeding along. We were pretty close to having wrapped up our argument and felt pretty strong about it. And then we were served a potential motion, 21 days to make a decision to not go forward. And it had threat of legal sanctions, of the sanctions being legal fees for RYAM. And we discussed it all weekend. And when it became clear that our attorney felt that we should seriously consider withdrawing, the sanctions, by the way, in Florida are split 50-50 between the attorney and the petitioner in this case, me. So it was a significant risk, and it's a long process of deciding to withdraw, but we did that because it was just not possible in 3 weeks to mount this administrative hearing defense of our petition without an attorney who was on our was aggressively on our side.
To be clear, the sanctions that we're talking about were a substantial amount of money. I mean, basically, RYAM, which is the company that wants to build this bioethanol manufacturing plant, wanted you, if you didn't win your administrative appeal, to pay their legal fees.
Yeah, they did, and I understand that that's a tactic, but in some instances, it's a winning tactic. It was in this case, but it's important to know what they won. We did get big-footed, outlawyered, put it any way you want to. That's what happened. But what they won was they don't have to go in front of the judge and justify the challenges that we made to their permit application. And that's all they won. They didn't get their building permit from this city, and there's still an issue there.
How much money are we talking about?
Well, there's been a lot of numbers floated around. Our attorney, when we first decided to bring this, felt that, and I don't know how he got this number, but it made sense to me. He said that these types of cases, the big pockets, deep pockets of RYAM, they might spend $300,000 to $500,000 on their legal fees, and so just pick the lower number, 300,000. It's still something that would financially ruin me. And again, with our attorney not willing to stay in the fight, we didn't really have much option but to withdraw and fight at the next level.
Medardo, briefly remind us, why is this project controversial, and why are some residents of the city of Fernandina Beach opposed to it?
Um, excuse me. Two issues. The challenge to the air permit is based on the premise that the main objective of an air permit is to be able to estimate the emissions of hazardous air pollutants against pre-established levels by the regulators. So, if you analyze in detail the application submitted by RYAM, what one finds is inaccurate information and insufficient information to be able to really assess the environmental impact of what they're proposing. So what we wanted was just a fair day in court. And to me, my personal opinion is that what has happened here is a travesty of our justice system. I don't think anybody in the world claims that one is 100% all the time. But there were two arguments here. One was ours that I just explained, and the other one was RYAM's. And so, what the justice system typically calls for is you take that to an impartial person, in this case, a judge. And the judge hears both sides, and the judge then makes a determination. That's what needs to happen. And I fully understand Tom's decision to withdraw the petition because the risk was too high. And what Ryan was claiming was that the arguments used in the petition were frivolous, which they were not. But that's where we are. The second part, which hasn't been addressed yet, and it will be addressed when the construction permit goes in front of the city, is the significant risks that the community perceives, and I certainly perceive, by building a bioethanol plant in the middle of another current entity, which processes very large quantities of already hazardous materials. And if you think of what happened at Conyers, Georgia recently,
And for people who don't know,
yes, there was an accident, a chemical fire in Conyers, Georgia, less than a month ago. And it was so large that the suburbs of Atlanta, which is more than 25 miles away, were impacted. 17,000 people were evacuated from Conyers, and 90,000 people were sheltered in place, which means you cannot open your doors, you cannot open your windows, you have to turn your air conditioner off so that it doesn't suck in, excuse the expression, contaminated air. That could easily happen. And one of the biggest concerns that I have is that the company, RYAM, is trying to trivialize, you know, i- implementing that project in Fernandina Beach. And I think it's just a huge risk within a barrier island where there are only two evacuation routes. There's really no known emergency plan. And I personally don't think that we could evacuate the city in case there's an accident like what happened at Conyers, Georgia.
I mean, we should be clear what happened in Conyers, Georgia happened at a very different kind of operation than what we're talking about here.
Yes and no. Many of the chemicals were similar, chlorine-based compounds. In fact, we did a first town hall back in May, I believe, April or May. And what I shared with the community were the kind of chemicals that would be released if there were a fire in RYAM's facility and the fire could not be controlled. And the chemicals that I mentioned are basically what the EPA is monitoring in Conyers, Georgia. Very, very toxic chemicals for those who might be interested. Phosgene, chloramine, hydrochloric acid, all very, very dangerous chemicals. The same would be produced, and others would be produced in case of a big fire at RYAM's facility.
Tom, I want to ask you, I mean, this RYAM is one of two pulp producing facilities in Fernandina Beach. The city's almost kind of sandwiched between them. The other one is West Rock. And so it's an industrial operation that's been there with a long history. And I think that the company itself even raised the question to you, of kind of moving into a place which you knew had these industrial plants and then deciding that, you didn't think that you wanted them to operate. Um, what do you say to that? I mean,
It's a fair question, but it's a pretty easy answer also. Um, well, number one, I think I was naive, as maybe 95% of the people that move to Fernandina are. We assume that our city commissioners and the regulatory agencies are on top of all of this. And I didn't know that all those chemicals were there. I thought it was a wood chipping facility. Well, when you chip wood and you're going to use it in something like that, there's all these chemicals you have to use. It's quite an involved process. I think that gives Ryan some kudos for being good at it, but I didn't know they were doing it there. But it's really not even the issue. The issue is now, do we add a bioethanol production plant to what's already there? And it seems to me not a very wise thing. But I was not upset with the fact that there's some industrial processes, industrial plants on the island. That's good for the tax base. I don't object to that. And I said on your program the last time, and I think it bears repeating, I'm not against the industrial sector. It's what protects our quality of life. We need a robust industrial sector. We we need to be smart about it, and I don't think it's smart to put it on our island.
The last time you were on, we did have RYAM officials on. We reached out to them for comment, and they sent a statement that said, Mr. Budd, Tom's permit challenge was based on inaccurate information and lacked factual support, which made him liable for sanctions. RYAM's letter informed him that he was pursuing a frivolous lawsuit and may have been following bad advice. The Florida Department of Environmental Protection has now issued the air permit. RYAM will continue to educate and inform our neighbors about this exciting project, which promotes the community's economic and environmental goals, adheres to strict regulatory standards, and helps support over 300 local jobs. Medardo, you have challenged some of the scientific claims in their permit application as inaccurate or not fully just not disclosing fully all of the information that they have, and they challenge your expertise.
Correct.
So tell us, I mean, obviously you're a citizen, but you are a chemist by trade. Why do you think that you have the ability to break down a complicated, almost prohibitively scientifically complicated permit like this?
Well, if you look at the main objection in the letter that they sent to Tom, their main objection is that I don't have air permitting experience, which I have never claimed to have. But the emission of air pollutants are based on chemistry knowledge, not permitting knowledge. And I have never claimed that I am infallible. I do stand behind the calculations that I made. The sulfur emission factors that were used were wrong, and it can be demonstrated. And so can many other things. In the letter that they sent to Tom, also, they cherry picked from my transcription out of context. And
Because you sat for a deposition in this, and they were quoting back things that you said during your deposition.
yes, thank you, Anne. I was deposed for about 8 hours. In fact, it's in the transcript that I objected to the methodology used by the lawyer. I told him that he was intimidating me, that he was harassing me, and that he was putting words in my mouth. That is in the transcripts for anybody to read, the judge to read. And, all we wanted was an impartial person, a judge, to hear both sides. So the question that I want the audience to think about is, if RYAM is convinced that my assessment was wrong, after waiting 5 months for the administrative hearing to occur, the hearing was going to occur on the 18th of November. Why not demonstrate to the community openly that my assessment was wrong? Never had the chance to debate that.
And why do you think, I mean, what do you think the answer is to that? Why not?
My opinion, we had a very successful town hall meeting the day before Tom received the letter. It was very clear that on the citizens that went to the podium in that town hall meeting, other than RYAM employees, were opposed to the project. And it was standing room only. And my opinion is that they actually were scared that they were going to lose the case in front of the administrative judge. That's my opinion.
If you're just joining us, we are talking about a controversial plan for a bioethanol processing plant in Fernandina Beach. You can join the conversation by calling 904-549-2937. You can also email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org, or you can reach out on social media. Tom, you alluded to the fact that this, decision to withdraw your petition canceled the administrative hearing, but that doesn't end the issue. And I want you to explain kind of what other avenues you see as, routes that citizens can or may take.
Thank you. I will. Let me clean a couple things up real quick. Um, the point of it being frivolous, that's a claim that is made in many legal actions to try to intimidate the other side. In this case, it was successful, but it doesn't mean it's true. It's a legal tactic. So if our attorney had been willing to stick with it, and although he's a very successful land use attorney, this is a little bit out of his lane, and I don't think he was able to devote the time to get behind the arguments, rather sophisticated arguments that some of the ones Medardo made, and that I subscribe to because I learned of them. So, but the other thing that I wanted to mention is Medardo mentioned a letter a couple times. I haven't disclosed the, uh, the letter. There was attached with it a 25-page motion that dealt with the 21-day safe harbor provisions, which is a second way that RYAM was threatening to get attorney's fees. And
And I don't think
so,
we know what the 21-day safe harbor provision is.
well, it just says that you have 21 days to withdraw.
Okay.
And we had some other reasons to do it more quickly than that. And so, anyway, I think we should move on from that. We've said, I just wanted to make sure that was clear. Now, your question about what's next. And Medardo alluded to it. There has to be a building permit or construction permit approved by the City of Fernandina Beach. And our comp plan and LDC, Land Development Code, both preclude or prohibit chemical manufacturing. And the city, when this first came up, went outside to Weiss Sirota, I believe the law firm's name is, one of the best, if not the best, land use attorneys in Florida, and asked for an outside legal opinion as to whether this application would violate the comp plan and LDC. And they kept it for quite some time, weeks, 5, 6, 8 weeks, I forget exactly, but before they answered. And I thought it was a pretty thorough answer, and it was crystal clear in their answer that it is it's prohibited by it's chemical manufacturing and prohibited by the comp plan and LDC. So that's really where the issue is. RYAM is claiming that making bioethanol using all those chemical processes is not chemical manufacturing. I don't find it a argument that will hold any water, but they're going to try, and I would if I were they. But so that's really where it's going to come down to.
I mean, the company is claiming that this is a fermentation, not a chemical manufacturing operation. But Medardo, I believe you've pointed out that their permit affidavit actually describes the project as chemical manufacturing.
Correct, and I don't know how they're going to overcome that hurdle. Submitting an environmental permit application is a very serious matter. It has an affidavit which says something to the extent the signature, the person who signs it says that the application is truthful, is accurate, and complete. The same person who signed it is the previous general manager of RYAM, Mark Homans. Included in the application, there's a description, and it says chemical manufacturing bioethanol by fermentation. To add, the application in the state of Florida has to be signed by a professional licensed engineer. All this was submitted in the application to the FDEP. And RYAM at the town hall was touting the experience of this consulting firm. I believe they said combined 140, 150 years of experience. So what is the situation that you have? You have a very serious environmental application signed by RYAM, signed by the consulting company, indicating that it's truthful and accurate, and it reads clearly chemical manufacturing. So now they're going to the city and saying, no, it isn't. How do you get around that explanation? I don't know.
So this issue will actually be decided by the city manager and the planning department, as opposed to the city commission, which I'm not sure everybody knows. And there's been some concern or conversation, I think, within the community about the fact that the new city manager is married to the district director for Congressman Aaron Bean, whose son is Mayor Bradley Bean, who also works at RYAM. I know he said that he's going to recuse himself from votes on RYAM, but is her role through her husband in this connection to the congressman concerning, given the congressman's son's connection to RYAM?
Well, it's certainly complicated, isn't it? But I won't go there. I've never met Sarah Campbell, and I'm counting on her integrity to get her to the right answer.
Okay. So this is now at a stage where ordinary citizens will kind of have a role speaking to their city managers, speaking to their planning officials?
Uh, that's yet to be determined. I mean, there's always forums where citizens can speak. Each of the 2 per month city commission meetings have public comment time. Uh, but the way I understand this, this will not be public. This the the permit will come in. It will be put through the different departments in the city that building permits go through. There's probably, in my view, going to be a referral to another outside expert on the chemical question, because I don't know how the city is going to have the expertise to answer that. But at some point, it'll come back to the city manager to decide whether the building permit should be issued or denied. It's pretty simple process. I think what our organization and others who view this as a, a bad decision and something they don't want to see happen should be just encouraging the city to follow the comp plan, and the more voices, the better. That's the real benefit to where we've gone so far in this process. Even though we had to withdraw, it has created quite an awareness in our city, and there is a large group of city residents that firmly do not want this to happen, and they're not going to be silent.
Medardo, I just wonder how kind of dispiriting it is to have a process move ahead as this one did successfully in terms of you got the right to an administrative hearing, which is no small task. You overcame RYAM's motion to dismiss,
Yes.
and you had actually gotten the judge to order some information to be released that the company had not previously released. And so there were victories, but ultimately this has ended because of a financial challenge.
Uh, yes. What I have reflected, and I reflected in front of RYAM's counsel during the deposition, is, as I mentioned in the first program, um, 8 years ago, I advocated for a joint venture between RYAM and a European company, and the project moved through and they built it next to their facility. And in that process, before even submitting a permit to FDEP or the city, there was full disclosure of what the process was like. You might recall that I made an independent assessment to the city commission. I think to some extent the city commission relied on that assessment to approve that project. But it was very transparent. I made that assessment with the condition that I would be provided unfettered access to their people and their data, which they did, but not this time. Not this time. In fact, to this date, even in the town hall meeting that was held last week, very, very little information was provided. And so it is disappointing. It is disappointing not to have the chance to explain to an independent person and have that person rule as to who was right or wrong. Yes.
Well, Medardo Monzon, Tom Budd, thanks so much for giving us this update on this project, and I'm sure we'll be in touch.
Thanks
Okay.
very much,
Thank you,
Ann.
Ann.